Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Community Oversight Advisory Board meeting for June 25th, 2015. Glad that you're here. Housekeeping item is that the restrooms are down this hall. Back here, both or 2 or 3 restrooms are down this hall. I've had several people approach me about the fact that these meetings are videotaped and ask that they not be, or that they be somehow curtailed. This is a public meeting, and Oregon has a very strong public meeting law. So as we are holding and doing the public's business, it is to be done in the public. So we don't curtail the videoing of public events. There are other ways for people to give us their input. Snail mail, email, website, and all of that information can be made available to you if that's the technique you would like to use. The bulk of this evening is going to be devoted to information on training, okay? So the first thing I'm supposed to tell you is about your microphones. I almost forgot, I'm sorry. You should pull them toward you so that they are 6 to 8 inches away when you speak, and speak directly into the microphone. This will let them capture what you're saying and probably minimize distortion. Public testimony is scheduled to start about 6:15. We'll try to keep to that if we can, 6:15, 6:20, somewhere in there. Before we go any further, I would like to ask Corey, who is here, Corey Murphy, who is here to talk with you for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes this evening. Corey?
Thank you, Kathleen. Ooh, there we go. Oh, okay. Is it? I'm getting some feedback, so I'll try to keep it. There we go. I wanted to read a letter to the COAB I wrote today. I feel very blessed and honored to have been part of the COAB, and I did want to share some news with the COAB I had recently. So I have given a written statement to Kathleen in her role, and I wanted to share with you all personally rather than send an email. Recently, I was unable to attend 2 meetings due to a week-long hospitalization and to my job during a particularly busy and successful Pride season. While I did email the COCO to inform the COAB that I would be unavailable during the last 2 meetings, it is still my responsibility to make sure that I do my part to fully engage and represent communities I come from as part of the COAB. Today, I've come before the COAB to immediately resign my position. The COAB needs a level of engagement that I can no longer commit to after my hospitalization and new but positive changes in my professional career. I want to thank the selection committee for allowing me to participate and for the COAB for allowing me the time to speak openly instead of in an impersonal email. While I will also continue to follow and support the actions of the COAB to fulfill the goals of the DOJ settlement agreement, I am also glad to continue to focus on the safety and inclusion of the LGBTQ community in all policies and initiatives undertaken by the Portland Police Bureau and the City of Portland. For those who have wondered specifically how the LGBTQ community is affected by the decisions made here, I say this: all the policies must be decided with this community in mind, because we truly are everywhere. Those who interact with a PPB in a mental crisis situation are also going to include those who are LGBTQ. Citizens of color who interact with law enforcement, sometimes at our worst moments, are going to include some folks who identify as LGBTQ. To not include discussion of LGBTQ communities in this body's policy and decision-making is to willfully deny agency to some of the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. I and other members of the LGBTQ community have already witnessed this happen, and it is my fervent hope that an increased awareness of these issues facing our community are taken into account here. Lastly, I believe in the work of the COAB. I also believe that changing policies and monitoring the DOJ settlement are not enough to create a greater sense of trust and cooperation in this community. At the end of the day, we are all citizens who deserve dignity and respect. This includes our officers putting themselves on the line every day to serve and protect. While there is no doubt in my mind that a culture within many law enforcement agencies exists which can and has perpetuated intolerance and systemic discrimination against people of color and other marginalized communities, there is also a culture of misunderstanding and sometimes hate that has been misguidedly visited upon many great officers just trying to do their job. The policies decided upon here and other oversight mechanisms can guide actions and accountability, but hearts and minds can only be amended with love, respect, and understanding. Dr. Gordley's call for truth and reconciliation may yet be the best vehicle to mend hearts and minds long after this settlement agreement has been closed. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much, everyone. I have appreciated being able to bring these perspectives to these meetings. I'm now going to go home and rest my lungs a little bit more till I'm 100%. And I do want you to know that I want to continue to be of any help I can to the COAB. This work is very important, and everyone here, the time you're giving is very important. If nobody else knows this, it's an incredible sacrifice to do this work. So please, please, when you see these COAB members out in the public, or when you see them during one of the testimony sessions, also thank them for their service, because it's not easy. So I will leave you all now, but thank you very much.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, thanks.
Take care of yourself.
I will.
All right, so I have a list of subcommittee reports that are coming up next. Incidentally, don't forget to raise your paddle if you want to talk, okay? Subcommittee reports. The first two reports are the Mental Health Committee and the Use of Force Committee, and Rochelle's going to do both those, is my understanding.
Yes. Last night, the Mental Health Crisis Response Committee met. And during that meeting, the Department of Justice brought their expert consultant on mental health to the meeting. His name is Mark Munitz, and he's a psychiatrist from Northeast Ohio, Akron specifically. And he talked with us about the history and the core elements of the Memphis model, or Crisis Intervention Training, CIT, which is being pursued as something the Portland police need to have in place. Well, they do have in place, but adequately or not is being questioned. So during that meeting, there were a couple questions asked which may be important for this group and for the community. One question was asked relative to the fact that the Portland Police Bureau has a Memphis Plus model, meaning that all new officers get trained in CIT, which is different than the Memphis model, which just calls for volunteers to be trained. And it was made clear by the Department of Justice last night that that would not be changed. I know there were some people in the community who were worried that the training for all the officers would not continue, but it will continue. Another question was asked as to the adequacy in numbers and in personnel specifically chosen to be on the enhanced CIT, in the enhanced CIT program, and the Department of Justice is not answering that question at the moment, as it's something that they in particular are looking into and will give us their answer in their annual report. So that's it, unless anybody else at the meeting would like to add.
Okay, now are you going to talk about the Use of Force Committee?
Yes.
Okay.
During Sharon Maxwell's absence from the Data Systems and Use of Force Committee, I've been chairing it for a couple of weeks. And during that time, we spent our time first in creating our responses to the COCO's quarterly report and putting them on the proper lines in the proper grid. In addition to that, because the subcommittee has a lot of work to do, and it seemed like we were sort of spinning our wheels looking at how we were going to do the work, we decided to move forward with forming small work groups, each work group taking a piece of the action, so to speak. So we have created at this point 3 small work groups, one on the use of force, one on data systems, and the third on bias-based policing. We believe we need to create a 4th work group on accountability, and ran into a problem in that we don't have enough personnel on the subcommittee to do that at this moment. So we have sent a message to the executive committee to consider, hopefully tomorrow, a question as to whether they would like to have our subcommittee work on that. But in order to do that, we would need a couple, 3 more members to our subcommittee, or to have an entirely new subcommittee formed to just look at accountability. So I'm looking forward to the answer from the executive committee on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy, are you ready to talk about the community engagement, where we are?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome everybody again, and the COAB, the Community Engagement Outreach Plan, we met last Thursday, I think it was, and we talked about a number of things, but one of the things we really focused in or honed in on was our Community Engagement Outreach Plan. And we got a timeline on the plan. We talked about the timeline on the plan on what needed to be done and when. And I don't know if you guys have copies of it or not, but we'll make sure you get copies of the timelines on what we're planning on doing and how we can engage not only the COAB subcommittee, but of course COAB, as well as other people who want to be involved in what we're doing as well. So long and short of it is that we can always use some extra help, some extra hands on deck. But as we go along, I know every subcommittee can say the same thing, and that's very true. But as we go along forward with this community engagement outreach plan, we'll make sure you all are all abreast of what's going on and what some of our timelines are, and what can you all do, or you can direct us even say, hey, we need to do some more stuff. We need to do this or that. So we're open to all those kinds of suggestions and directions, but we do got an outline, and I want to say Amy did a good job on outlining some of this outreach engagement piece. And it's all the way outlined and timeline through November. So I think by November we should have most, if not all, of these things at least in motion and in vogue for sure. One of the top things we need to be doing right now, and that's yesterday, if you will, is the survey, the community survey. We need to have that done. Actually, tomorrow. Yeah, we need it done tomorrow. Absolutely. But so we're running a little behind on that, but that's something that is a top priority for CHOPS right now, is to get that out and rolling. And again, then there's some other things that we need to get out and rolling within the next couple of months as we keep moving forward. Again, if y'all don't got this, we'll make sure everybody get a copy of this before we leave. But one other thing we talked about too, you know, it's kind of odd if you're speaking before the city council, you're speaking before anyone. I spoke before the city council a couple of weeks ago, and you know, I basically read what we had said, what we put down. That was pretty cool to do, just to read the stuff, read it off. But you know, to me, when I'm speaking of something, you know, I'm feeling real passionate about it, reading it don't work for me really that well. But that's, you know, I needed to maybe study it harder so I wouldn't have to read it. But long story short on that is when somebody say you work with the COAB, you work with the Community Engagement Outreach Plan. You know, we talked about this in our committee. How do we shorten that to, like, okay, make it really simple? A community engagement outreach plan may be engage, reach out, and support. That's what our thing may be. That's just an example. But the idea is, it's hard to explain to people what are we doing and why are we doing it and how's it, you know, and what's some of the outcomes. Some people know about the settlement agreement, and even the ones who know about it don't really know about it. So they think this is an exercise of futility and wonder what's going on there, and think the same old thing is going to happen 2 or 3 years down the road, or they think there's nothing going to be going on. So being a part of this community engagement outreach piece, that's really a key piece, because that's the community. We got to sell this thing. When I say sell it, let them all know that we're all in it together, and we're trying to work together to make things better for all the citizens of Portland, Oregon, and nationwide, if you will. But Portland, Oregon is a start. So we talked about that a lot. Now, but that was good, just hashing that out and how do we get this to people? You can chime in if you want to, Vince, any type of.
Well, I was on
Pretty
timeline.
soon.
I thought
Yeah.
you got a timeline, Jim. Okay,
You got about another minute.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, but basically the thing was, how do we get this out to the community? We strategized several different ways on how to get it out. I won't go into detail, but how to get it out to the community and how to help the community and get the community to understand what we're doing. That's what disconnect be sometimes. Like, they don't, what are you doing? But once they understand what we do, I think the community is all for the same thing. We're all for a nice, good community, a peaceful community where we all work together. And you know, just where we all work together through whatever, through hard times and not so and good times, but we all work together. And that's what all the community wants. But I'm stuttering now a little bit, because I'm thinking like we're trying to explain how this will look. I want to be explaining in what 2 sentences or 3 sentences most almost. It's not a mission statement, because COAB already got the settlement agreement to guide us. But I want to be able to explain it in such a way like this is how it is. Engage, support, and reach out. This is what we do, and something like that. That's not the word, but something like that where people will they understand this is what we want. This is what I want as well. So they'll see. But so we worked on that a lot. And again, the engagement outreach plan has been outlined and timeline for all the way through November. And again, that's thanks to our staff over here. Thanks definitely to Amy for putting that piece together. And of course, thank you to the outreach committee for engaging it, bringing it apart, bringing it together, and Amy put it together. So.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy.
You cut me off? No, okay, no.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody from the executive committee? Bud, are you doing that?
I was not at the last executive committee meeting.
Okay.
I would be a poor choice. I'm sorry.
Is there anybody who wants to give a short report on executive committee?
I don't really have anything to report. I was in the ER on Thursday and Saturday, and so I'm a little bit behind on what's going on, so I can't really comment. But now I'm back on track and ready to get things rolling. I'm healthy again, so sorry, I don't have anything to contribute.
Okay. Ava?
As a member of the executive committee and just reflecting on what we heard from Dr. Silver earlier about the needs of one of the subcommittees, I'm wondering if a part of what you're asking, Rochelle, is that the executive committee look at inviting members of the public, more members of the public, to participate on the subcommittees.
We talked about that, and if that is something the executive committee can see to have happen, we are very willing to do that.
Okay.
I wanted to chime in on that. We actually had talked about getting the list of all of the other applicants because we want to invite some of them to participate as well on the subcommittees to see if they're still willing. And then also some of the alternates that, you know, are just sitting around waiting to be a part of it. I think we need to invite them as well to come and participate on the subcommittees. There was a gentleman at the mental health meeting. No, he was at the use of force. I'm getting mixed up. They were all this week. I think he was at the use of force subcommittee, and he was an applicant and said he was very much interested. He gave his name to Amy, and so perhaps she can pass that on to the executive committee.
Okay. As I said, tonight's focus is a lot on presentation. And we're going to have Captain Marshman make a presentation. After that, we'll have some public input, and then we'll go back into presentations. Okay? So you want to start?
Thank you. Good evening. I was going to stand up, but since I think I could see everybody from here, I think I'll just sit down and make it a little bit easier. And I'm sensitive to time, so I'll keep the time limit. And Jimmy, I sympathize with you. You're trying to explain the community engagement plan, and it's hard to do. So within 10 minutes, I'm going to try my best to give a very, very high-level overview of the Portland Police Bureau. The goal is later on tonight, you'll get a deeper dive into the training division. Maybe at future meetings, you get a deeper dive, if you will, into the accountability system or our internal affairs system, data systems. There's a lot going on in the Police Bureau, so my flyby, if you will, tonight is going to be pretty high level. So I guess I'll just have Amy do the next slide, please. So my IT skills, that's it right there. And since we moved locations, that was our former meeting place. So I even landed on the wrong spot. So this is our high level overview. So next slide, please. Yeah, that's what you get from me for IT. So the Police Bureau. Now, my goal here, again, I don't want to be disparaging or talk down to anybody. So if some of this is redundant, I apologize up front. But as you hear in training tonight, there's a state of Oregon map there for you. Once an officer graduates from the state academy, they actually have police powers in the whole state of Oregon. I actually mentioned that to some folks earlier, and that wasn't known. So again, this is the high level briefs. There's Oregon. And then the little red box is Multnomah County, which is obviously where we're in. It's the smallest county within the state of Oregon, but it has the highest population. Now, the 2010 census day is about 735,000 residents. It's obviously a little bit higher than that. The next bullet point, I shift to BOIC. Now, in the city of Portland, there's 26, 27, 28, I should know this, but I don't, various bureaus: Fire Bureau, Water Bureau, Police Bureau, Parks Bureau. The communications system is the Bureau of Emergency Communications. It's a little bit different in Portland. Some police agencies across the country, the 911 system, who you call for police, fire, and medical, is run by the police department. At least in this county and the city of Portland, it's run by BOIC, a different bureau. So BOIC dispatches to all the geographic footprint of Multnomah County. And besides the Portland Police Bureau dispatch system, they also dispatch the Portland Fire Bureau, Gresham Fire, Gresham Police, Fairview Police, Troutdale Police, and Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. So as we get deeper into successive classes and deeper dives into how the Police Bureau works, when we talk about data and collecting data, we pull some of our data from BOEC, but they have a big umbrella for the whole county. Next slide, please. Thanks. So we'll drill down a little bit deeper. So the bigger footprint there is Multnomah County, and in the green box is the city of Portland, which the Portland Police Bureau patrols in. Portland's about 146 square miles, and the current population of Portland's just about 600,000 residents now. The call volume that we handle, so in the law enforcement world, we talk about dispatch calls, self-initiated calls, and part 1, part 2 crimes. So there's a little bit of a trend there. Trends at least 3 years worth, so it's not a lecture on data. But dispatch calls tend to go up over the last 3 years, and our self-initiated calls tend to go down. Combined together for 2014, our dispatch calls and self-initiated, add those two together, it's right around 365,000 calls. That's roughly about 1,000 calls a day that Portland police officers handle. The dispatch calls are the ones dispatched by BOEC, which I briefly talked about. The self-initiated ones are calls that officers initiate themselves, like a traffic stop, or if they're driving down the street, they see something, they can generate a call themselves. So that's the two big buckets. Dispatch calls and self-initiated calls, again, it's that nomenclature that law enforcement tends to use. Part 1 crimes and part 2 crimes, I'll touch on this very briefly. So part 1 crimes, that's how we report to the federal government. Again, it's a commonly used term. Part 1 crimes are, for example, murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault. Those are those high-level serious crimes. Fortunately, trending down. Part 1 property crimes are also in that, and those, kind of dip down, dip back up. Now, you add those together, it's about, 37,000 calls. All that really says there's a bunch of other calls that are happening that don't land in this category. So traffic accidents, those types of calls. One thing I didn't put up here, but again, the data systems will get into this, is part 2 crimes, simple assaults, embezzlements, forgeries. We lump these categories to try to get comparison numbers from city to city. But I just want to touch on that just a little bit of how we measure, if you will, our workload. Next slide, please. I pass this out to the group here, and bigger ones. I have a couple extra if you want to hand them out around. I briefly wanted to touch on the organizational chart of the Police Bureau, which is the big chart on the left, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But the top question I kind of want to ask the group. So in the United States, people may or may not be surprised, there's about 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, in the 50 states. That's a lot of law enforcement agencies. This is the piece where I'm curious if anybody knows where Portland ranks roughly in that 18,000. Guesses? Oh, I'm sorry. The number of sworn personnel. So we have about 950 sworn personnel. Any guesses? Oops. Well, I'll just throw it. Go ahead, Amy. Close. We're actually 30th. So folks that aren't from Portland, sometimes I still think Portland's kind of a small town. In some ways it is, which is good. But of the 18,000 police agencies in the United States, Portland's about 30th in size. So we're actually one of the larger departments. That kind of plays a role as we figure out the type of work we do. So on the right-hand side, we have about 950 sworn personnel. That's from the chief of police, which on the org chart is that very, very top box, to the brand new recruit that's in the state academy that Captain Parman will talk about later on. So it's top to bottom, very high seniority to very low seniority. Of those 950 sworn members, about 647 are officers, so about 2/3. Of those 647, I'm not going to get into numbers a lot, there's about 370 officers that work patrol. So those are the folks you see in police cars, driving around in uniform, that I think people commonly think when they picture a police officer, that's what they see. So it's those 370 officers who work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who are handling about 1,000 calls a day. That's the workload piece here. Another thing with the Part 1, Part 2 crimes, a common metric that there's pros and cons to it is how many officers per 1,000 population. We have 1.6. That's a little bit low to our comparable cities. East Coast agencies bump this up quite a bit. East Coast agencies get to 3 to 4 officers per 1,000. That's quite high. West Coast agencies tend to be lower. I throw up there Seattle as a comparison. They're just a little bit bigger every which way. They have about 300 more sworn personnel than we do. You could barely tell there's about 5 red boxes highlighted on the org chart. So I've talked to this group a couple times. I said, as I manage the DOJ agreement for the police bureau, there's 5 big categories like training, data, professional standards, accountability. Those are those boxes that are circled. I put that up there because all the other boxes are units and divisions within the police bureau. There's a lot going on. It's a very, very complex system. Now, it's not to say that we're not focusing on the far left of the organizational chart. The DOJ work goes across the whole organization, but I just wanted to highlight for the group the 5 buckets, if you will, that we're focusing on. And to keep us on time, the last chart, now it's out, I'll tell you this, it's out of date. I got it from the Bureau of Human Resources. So again, Parks Bureau, Water Bureau, Fire Bureau, there's a Bureau of Human Resources in the city of Portland. This is out of date data because it's December 31st, and it's the demographic breakdown of the sworn personnel by rank. And I'll tell you it's out of date because we have 4 assistant chiefs now. Chief O'Day brought a 4th branch on, so it's not 3 assistant chiefs, it's 4. You have Assistant Chief Kevin Medica. And our captains, we have more than 11. Like Captain Elmore, who's here tonight, he was also promoted after the December 31st deadline. But I'll give you a rough breakdown of the demographics in the agency, which the chief and others were, it's critically important to have more diversity within our department. And I can't remember, Amy, one more slide. I think I broke down the percentages here too. It's not, yeah, it's probably kind of hard to read that chart. But Amy has this, we can get it out to everybody. So that's the demographic breakdown as of the last day of 2014, but it's changed in a couple categories.
How many of those are on patrol?
So the officers, the 641, and that's the real number versus our budgeted number, not to get into that. So at top line of that 640 or so officers, there's 370, 380 that are assigned to patrol work. But I didn't drill down, if you will, to that breakdown.
Other questions?
Super high level view.
I do have a question. Under this map right here, where organizational chart,
Yes.
and the reason that Strategic Services Division, what is the role of that group?
So I do 2 jobs. So I'm in the box that's DOJ as a DOJ compliance coordinator. I'm also the captain of the Strategic Services Division. So Strategic Services, in broad terms, is all the data. The majority of the crime analysts are in that shop, the data systems.
Other questions? Okay.
Oh, I have one more. On the traffic division, you said none of that information was in the numbers for tracking of actual stops or anything? Is that correct?
No, so the traffic division, they would be doing the self-initiated calls.
Self-initiated.
Yeah,
okay.
almost all their work, well, their traffic stop would be self-initiated. If they get called to a traffic crash, it'll be dispatch calls.
And it actually is in this number here?
Yes,
Okay.
yes it is. Good questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think this isn't, oh, I have to do something to make it work, I don't know. Thank you very much, Mike. Okay. So we're going to take a break from the presentations, by the Portland Police Bureau and open the floor for public testimony. Amy, do we have anybody signed up? Dan Handelman. You've got 3 minutes. And I'll start when you start.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling very well. I hope you can understand what I'm saying. It's unfortunate that we're losing Corey as a member of your group, and we're sad to see him go. But it also occurred to me that since he knew ahead of time that he was going to be resigning, that there could have been alternates here who could have taken his seat and participated in the meeting at the table instead of being second-class citizens, which they've been relegated to. And it's unfortunate now we're going to wait till the next meeting to fill that seat, and they don't have the benefit of this training. I hope that wasn't me. I know a lot of people are advocate for public testimony early in the meeting. I personally like it being a little bit later because there's not much has been done to comment on. I'm glad to hear that the subcommittees this is the first time the subcommittees all reported, and I want to applaud you for that because that's where a lot of the work is happening. And as somebody who can't make it to those meetings, it's nice to hear some reporting about what's going on. The issue about people not wanting to be on videotape, I think it would be, even though it is a public meeting and everyone in the room can see you here and somebody could take a picture of you if you want, we could be a courtesy to say, if you don't want to be on the video camera during your testimony, we will not point the camera at you. That's what we do sometimes at another group I'm in called Flying Focus Video Collective, just as a courtesy for those people. So I think that's something to think about. And we're looking forward to the new quarterly report. Actually, a couple members of our group sat down with Mr. Christoph to have some discussions about changes that might be happening to the quarterly report. We're hoping that it comes out soon and we can see what the changes are like. One of the issues that we sort of seem to have come to an impasse about was the issue of having people identified by name when they're public figures, like the chief of police and things like that. And I think you all made a suggestion that there should be less anonymization in the report. And I understand the need for people who might be whistleblowers or otherwise might have concerns about what they're saying in the report and being identified. But the people who it's obvious who they are, it really makes it hard to read the report when the names aren't used. And we eventually won that issue. There are annual reports that come out about police shootings. In the first early ones, it said the suspect, the officer, and it got really confusing and convoluted, but eventually they started using the names and it was so much easier to understand. So I'm hoping that you will pursue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, but you're not next. The next person on the list is Barbara Ross. Or Russ? Okay. Joanne Hardesty.
My apologies, madam. I'm Joanne Hardesty. I am president of the NAACP Portland chapter. I am grateful and thankful that we have an organizational process now that's moving information to the public and moving it through the committee. So it's wonderful to see the committee coalescing around some real work. I'm excited about that. I would like you to ask about what the demographic information is for the officers that work like the gang enforcement unit. Because my understanding is they're primarily white, they're primarily male, and I think that has an impact on how kids of color are treated out in our community. And so I think that would be a good question to go back to the police bureau to get that real data. I'm concerned because 44% of the traffic stops by the gang enforcement unit are African Americans in a city that has a 7% African American population. So you can see how that would be of concern when consistently that's the data that the Portland Police Bureau collects and then reports back to the public. And so it is my assertion that because this body is really looking at how to make policing equitable in the city of Portland, that I encourage you not to limit yourself to the letters of what you're looking at, but what you find, come back with some good recommendations about how we fixed it. Because that's what the Department of Justice promised when they came in. They said, we're going to investigate, and wherever the data leads us. And they didn't go far enough. And so this is a great start. I appreciate the organization. But again, I think that there are some deeper issues. I'm concerned if you don't know as much as I know about the Police Bureau, when you hear the training, when you hear the presentation, that is just so complicated. There's nothing complicated about treating people respectfully. There's nothing complicated about treating people with dignity, whether they have mental health issues, whether they're from minority communities. That's not complicated at all. Your job is not complicated. And so please don't allow the Bureau to make it look so big that common sense doesn't rule the committee's work. Because if it doesn't pass the smell test, the community will not accept it. Thank you.
Elmore on that is regarding the gang enforcement. Could you speak to that at all?
Well, in fact, I'm sitting in a chair right now, but the concept, I don't know the exact numbers now because of the escalating violence that we've had in the city. We have added an additional 26 officers from all over the Bureau. And so I can get you that answer, though, very quickly, as I'm sending a text right now to make sure that we understand. But we have just augmented a lot of bodies and moved around a lot of folks to make sure that we deal with the escalating violence throughout the city. And I can get you an answer for that, but I don't want to guess. I want to give you the correct information.
I'm having some difficulty reading this next name. It looks like Sam or S. Sam Sachs. Oh. You want to pass? Hmm?
I'm sorry?
So my name is Sam Sachs. Some of you know me. I'm the chair of the Community Police Relations Committee and a Human Rights Commissioner. So I just wanted to say hello. We meet the third Wednesday of every month. Right now we meet at ERCO, and the time is 4:30 to 6:30. So that's it. I think you guys are doing great work, and look forward to doing some collaborative stuff with this group. So if you have any questions, please contact me. My email is thenohatezone@yahoo.com. And like I said, we meet the third Wednesday of every month at ERCO from 4:30 to 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Dante James. Good evening.
You won't have to time me because I'll be brief. I just wanted to offer a thought/suggestion on language, messaging, nomenclature. As I was listening to some of the comments and discussion, the conversation seemed to revolve around what is for the benefit of the citizens of this city. And I would suggest to you that the mandate of this is larger than just towards citizens. We're talking about the residents of this city.
Yeah.
And so if we are to engage those folks who may not in fact be citizens and not have them feeling left out of this conversation or this work, I would just encourage you to be conscious of the language that you use when talking about the people who are going to be impacted and affected by the work that you do. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dante. Is there anyone else who would like to give some public testimony at this point in time?
I did.
But you're a COAB member. You
Get an opportunity to make a comment as a COAB member.
You can make a comment as a COAB member.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to take this time to just speak to the fact that this is a public space. And as we know, in South Carolina, Charleston, there were 9 people who were assassinated, murdered by a terrorist. And I would like to ask for a moment of silence in remembrance of them, as well as quote the Psalms 23. So we can do the moment of silence for 10 seconds, and then I would like to quote that. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valleys of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We just want to be reminded that this is a public space, that we want everyone to feel safe when they walk through the doors, and that they don't have to worry about hurt, harm, or danger. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a 10-minute break. I'm sorry about the air conditioning. It was working when I got here. I'm not... Automatically, that's what yeah. Thank you, Judith.